My name is Celia Monroe, and if you asked me what betrayal looks like, I wouldn't tell you about lipstick stains or late night texts. I wouldn't mention whispers on the phone or hotel receipts tucked in pockets. No, I would tell you about a man sitting across from me in a polished conference room flanked by a lawyer who knew my name before I even said it. I would tell you about a smile so calm it sliced deeper than any insult. And I would tell you how I once believed marriage was forever, until the man I married tried to erase me from our son's life with the stroke of a pen. We were married for 7 years. Ethan was charming, collected, and calculated in all the ways that made people call him stable. He managed a consulting firm, had a firm handshake, and always said the right thing at dinner parties. People loved Ethan, and I did too at first. When we had our son Oliver, I left my job as a junior associate at a law firm to stay home. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. I had passed the bar on my first try. I had dreams, but I believed in partnership. I believed in us. He promised I'd return to work when things settled, but settled never came. Instead, I became the mother who did the 2 a.m. feedings, the planner of birthday parties, the keeper of routines. Ethan worked late or traveled or attended networking events. It was fine. I told myself it was fine until it wasn't. The first crack didn't come with shouting. It came in silence. It was a Tuesday. I still remember the chill in the air. I had just picked Oliver up from preschool, and we were making pancakes because he liked breakfast for dinner. Ethan walked in early. That should have been my first warning. He didn't kiss me, didn't say hi to Oliver. He just dropped a manila envelope on the counter and said, "We need to talk." Inside was a petition for divorce, filed, signed. With an attached request for sole custody of Oliver, I laughed at first. Honestly, I thought it was a joke. Then he said, "I'm worried about your mental stability, Celia. You've been," off those words, off like I was a switch he could flip. I stared at the papers, blinking like the words might rearrange themselves. "Ethan, what the hell is this?" He didn't answer. Instead, he nodded toward the front door. That's when the knock came. A man stepped in, gray suit, calm eyes, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Monroe, I'm here to conduct a wellness check on behalf of the court." My world didn't crumble. It froze. That night, Oliver cried in my arms as strangers walked through our home, checking the medicine cabinet, opening the fridge, observing like I was part of a crime scene. They took notes, measured responses. One of them asked if I had a history of anxiety. "I'm a mother," I replied. "Of course I worry." They didn't smile. 2 days later, temporary custody was granted to Ethan pending further evaluation. And just like that, my baby, my whole world was living in a house I used to call home, without me. The following weeks blurred. I tried to fight. I reached out to Ethan, pleaded, then begged, then threatened. He stayed calm, so infuriatingly calm. His attorney emailed documents daily, evidence of Celia Monroe's instability. There were photos of me looking tired, screenshots of texts out of context, a video of me snapping. "I'm not okay right now," from a night Oliver had a 104-degree fever, and I hadn't slept in 36 hours. They painted a portrait of me I didn't recognize. But the courts did. They nodded, they sighed, and they said, "Let's prioritize the child's well-being." It felt like death by paperwork. My family didn't understand. My sister suggested maybe I had been overreacting. My mother offered prayer instead of support. "Maybe this is for the best," someone said. Give it time, but I knew better. This wasn't a misunderstanding, this was a setup. This was a man who knew exactly how to use my exhaustion against me. A man who'd watched me burn out from motherhood and decided that made me unfit. But I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fall apart. Because I was trained for war, I just forgot how to fight, and now I was ready. The first thing I did was hire a new lawyer, not a friend of a friend, not a soft-spoken negotiator. I found Clara Yu, a woman who had once made a Wall Street exec cry during deposition. She read the case file in silence, then looked up and said, "This isn't family law, this is assassination." "I know," I whispered. Clara didn't smile. "Then let's sharpen the knives." There's a special kind of grief in knowing the person you once loved is now scripting your downfall, but there's also a strange power in clarity. I stopped begging, stopped texting Ethan, stopped explaining myself to people who never bothered to ask what really happened. Instead, I made coffee. I opened my laptop, and I began building a timeline, every lie, every manipulation, every contradiction in his statement. And then came the gift I never expected, a flash drive. Slipped into my mailbox in a tiny yellow envelope, no name, no note, just a video. It was Oliver recording, whispering. "Dad said I shouldn't talk to you. He said we have to pretend you're crazy." But I don't think that's true. He looked into the camera, clutching his favorite stuffed turtle. "I miss you, Mom," I cried for the first time in weeks. Not because I was broken, but because for the first time I had proof. The quiet kind, the kind that doesn't scream, the kind that silences a courtroom. You know what they never tell you about being framed? It's not the accusations that kill you, it's the silence that follows, the way people shift their eyes when you walk into a room. The way your own reflection starts to feel like a stranger, and worst of all, the way your child's name becomes a courtroom term instead of a bedtime whisper. They had painted me as unfit, unstable, unwell, and for a while I believed it. Because when the entire system treats you like a cautionary tale, you start to second guess your own truth. But that phase didn't last long. I didn't have time to crumble, I had to fight, quietly. Clara, my lawyer, worked like a surgeon, precise, unflinching. Every sentence she spoke was a scalpel aimed at the jugular of Ethan's case. I want their entire timeline, she said, eyes sharp. We're not defending you, we're prosecuting them. I spent nights building a digital wall. Screenshots, emails, calendar invites, grocery receipts, medical bills. Every piece of paper they once dismissed as motherhood clutter, I turned into evidence. The same pediatrician visits Ethan never showed up to. Now they were proof I'd always been the primary parent. The parenting class certificate I earned before Oliver was born. He never completed his. We found the registration, then the refund he requested 2 weeks later. He was never planning to share parenthood, just steal it. But facts weren't enough. We needed intent, and that's where the flash drive came in, the one with Oliver's video. Clara watched it 3 times, no expression. Then she leaned back and said, "This changes everything." "But is it enough?" I asked. She didn't blink. "It's a beginning." We subpoenaed Ethan's text logs, not the cherry-picked ones his team presented, but the entire history. It turns out the same man who claimed I was unstable had been messaging his assistant explicit fantasies while I was in therapy for postpartum anxiety. The same man who said I'd emotionally endangered our child had skipped Oliver's second birthday for a business trip with a woman named Chloe. We found photos, location pings, but we didn't rush to present them. "No, we wait," Clara said. "They're building arrogance, let it rise." She was right. In the next hearing, Ethan's lawyer stood up with the confidence of a man holding a loaded gun. He smiled as he submitted a statement from a supposed neighbor claiming I screamed at Oliver in public. I recognized the name. It was his old college friend, a man who hadn't lived in our zip code in years. They weren't even trying to make it look real anymore, because they didn't think I would fight back. Not the woman who wore soft cardigans and read bedtime stories and cried in stairwells. They thought I'd full disappear. They forgot who I used to be, who I still was beneath the grief. I was a woman trained in truth, and the truth was about to rip their case apart. I started documenting everything. I wore a body cam on every supervised visit. I recorded Ethan arriving 20 minutes late, distracted, impatient, and scrolling through his phone while Oliver played alone. I captured his mother whispering to my son, "Don't worry, you'll forget her soon." And I smiled, because there's something terrifying about a woman who smiles when she's bleeding. It means she's collecting. And I was collecting silence, the kind of silence that turns into thunder. Then came the evaluation. A court-appointed child psychologist sat down with both of us. Ethan spoke first, polished, emotional. A father concerned for his son's well-being. He used all the right buzzwords: structure, consistency, maternal instability. He even cried. Then it was my turn. I didn't cry. I handed her a binder, neatly tabbed. I gave her the flash drive. I spoke softly. Clearly no accusations, just facts. I watched the psychologist blink hard when she saw Oliver's video. When she looked back at me, her eyes were full, not of pity, but of something rarer: respect. A week later, we received the evaluator's report. Ms. Monroe demonstrates clear signs of emotional stability, parental attunement, and commitment to her child's well-being. Mr. Monroe presents as performative and manipulative in clinical settings. Concerns of coaching and coercive control were noted. Clara's lips curled into the faintest smirk. It's starting. But I didn't feel victory, not yet. Because this wasn't about custody anymore, it was about legacy. About showing my son that silence doesn't mean surrender, that truth doesn't always shout, sometimes it just waits. Then came the final blow, one we didn't even look for. During our digital subpoena, we discovered an encrypted folder on Ethan's shared drive. It was labeled Archived Media. Inside, edited video clips spliced together to depict me screaming. Photos of pill bottles rearranged to look like hoarding. Even an email draft from his lawyer coaching him on how to leverage instability. He hadn't just framed me. He'd rehearsed it, strategized it, digitally produced it. Clara printed everything, bound it in black. This, she said, is what a courtroom twist looks like. We didn't tell the judge, not yet. Because when you're holding fire, you don't scream, you wait for the gasoline. The night before the final hearing, I couldn't sleep. I watched Oliver's video again. He looked so small, so brave. I whispered, "Just a little longer, baby. Tomorrow mommy tells the whole truth." And for the first time in months, I didn't cry. I just stared into the darkness, steady and still. Because the next morning I wasn't walking into a courtroom as the accused. I was walking in as the reckoning. People think revenge comes with noise, shouting, slamming doors, fire in your eyes. But mine came with printers humming at midnight, binders color-coded by deceit, and the kind of calm only a woman betrayed too many times can carry in her spine. Ethan thought I would break, but I was building the fire, one document at a time, one truth at a time, until I had everything I needed to burn his story down without ever raising my voice. I woke up on the morning of the final hearing with my body humming, not from fear, not anymore, from clarity, that strange stillness you get right before a storm hits. But this time, I was the one bringing the storm. Oliver was with my sister for the night. Clara picked me up just after sunrise. She didn't speak much during the drive, neither did I. There was nothing left to say. We'd done the work. Now we watched it speak. The courthouse smelled like dust and ink and old lies. I sat quietly in the corridor, heels crossed, palms still. Ethan walked in wearing a navy suit and a smirk, one he reserved for victories he thought were already his. He looked at me like a man about to deliver a eulogy, pity in his eyes, but I wasn't a widow, I was a weapon, and his funeral was about to begin. The judge entered. Everyone stood. I exhaled slowly. This was it, Ethan's attorney began with a summary, as hollow as it was polished. Your Honor, we maintain that Ms. Monroe's recent behavior continues to show signs of emotional volatility, and that Mr. Monroe is best suited to provide a stable environment for their child. As seen in Exhibits 3 through 7, Clara leaned in and whispered, "They're walking into it." I nodded. Let them dig, let them keep talking, because the deeper the grave, the harder it is to climb out. Ethan took the stand. He performed as always, talked about my outbursts, my unpredictable moods, the time I left Oliver at school an hour late. He cried again. Even dabbed the corner of his eye with a tissue like he was in a soap opera rerun. Then came the expert, a therapist Ethan had seen once, paid out of pocket. No license on file. She parroted what he fed her. How I was emotionally dependent. How I used Oliver as emotional leverage. Clara objected. The judge allowed it. Barely. But none of it mattered. We weren't playing defense, we were waiting for the match. Ms. Monroe, the judge, finally said, "You may present your rebuttal." Clara stood up, calm, unshaken. She walked to the evidence cart, pulled out the black binder. "This," she said, "is our response. We will begin with timeline inconsistencies in the plaintiff's statement. Then we'll introduce digital evidence that contradicts sworn testimony, including falsified media and unethical coaching." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Falsified?" Clara nodded. "With the court's permission, we'll begin with a short video clip submitted by the child himself, unprompted, unedited." The courtroom shifted. Ethan sat straighter, then the screen lit up. It was Oliver, 7 years old, bright eyes, small voice. "Dad told me not to talk to Mommy anymore," he says. "We have to pretend she's sick, so the judge picks him. But Mommy isn't sick. She just misses me." The courtroom went still. You could hear the breath catch in the bailiff's chest. Oliver clutched his stuffed turtle. Looked into the camera like he was searching for me. "Please don't forget Mommy. She's the one who always packs my lunch, the one who sings the blue song when I'm scared. I just want to go home." The screen went black, and for one long second, even the judge forgot how to speak. Ethan's face crumpled, but Clara wasn't done. She introduced the second exhibit, the encrypted folder. Inside, email exchanges between Ethan and his lawyer strategizing how to fabricate concern. Instructions on staging photos, audio notes from Ethan. Coaching Oliver on what to say to the psychologist. The judge leaned forward. "Is this verified?" Clara's tone never wavered. "We have a forensic report confirming metadata timestamps and device origin, all traced to Mr. Monroe's personal laptop." Then she walked forward. "One last item, Your Honor." She placed a printed transcript on the bench. A recorded call between Ethan and his mother, his voice crisp and cruel. "She's too tired to fight. Trust me, by the time I'm done, she'll look unfit without me even touching her." The judge read it. Then she looked at me and I saw it. Not pity, not sympathy, justice. Ethan's lawyer tried to object, scrambled, claimed emotional manipulation, but the damage was done. Truth doesn't need backup when it walks in holding receipts. When the judge ruled, her voice was hoarse. "This court finds that Mr. Monroe's actions constitute coercive control, digital fabrication of evidence, and emotional manipulation of a minor custody is awarded to Ms. Monroe. All supervised visitation with the father is to be evaluated further." Furthermore, this court refers Mr. Monroe's conduct for legal review under potential perjury and custodial interference statutes. Clara squeezed my arm. I didn't cry, Ethan did. He buried his face in his hands. The man who once called me emotionally unstable now unraveling under the weight of his own design. When I walked out of that courtroom, I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean, like someone who had been in a burning house and finally stepped into air that didn't choke. Oliver. ran into my arms in the hallway. "Are we going home now, Mommy?" I knelt down, kissed his forehead. We never left baby. We were just waiting for the storm to pass. That night, I tucked him in with his turtle. I sang the blue song, and when he fell asleep, I sat by the window and watched the city breathe. Not in anger, not in triumph, just peace. And in the quiet, I whispered to myself. He tried to rewrite my story, but I'm the one holding the pen. After the ruling, everyone assumed the story ended. The headlines might have read Mother wins full custody, father exposed in court, justice served, but the real story, it didn't end in the courtroom. Because justice in law is not the same as justice in life. He lost the battle, but there was a truth buried so deep, so personal that even Clara hadn't seen it coming, and I was done keeping it hidden. For weeks after the hearing, Ethan disappeared from public view. His business partner issued a vague statement. His name faded from the firm's website. The polished man who used to shake hands with mayors and donors had become a whisper no one wanted to touch. Meanwhile, I rebuilt, slowly, gently. Oliver came home. The house, once too quiet, was now filled with sticky fingers and midnight giggles again, but trauma leaves fingerprints. I knew that. He still flinched when someone raised their voice, still looked over his shoulder when the phone rang too long. So I gave him space, and I gave him the truth bit by bit. But there was one truth I hadn't told anyone, not my sister, not Clara, not even myself, not out loud. It wasn't just Ethan's lies that nearly broke me, it was mine. 3 years ago, during the darkest days of postpartum exhaustion, I had a breakdown. I didn't scream or throw things or end up in a hospital. No, I just left. One night I got in my car, drove for an hour, and sat in a gas station parking lot staring at my hands for so long they stopped feeling like mine. I was gone for 6 hours. Ethan never reported it, never even asked where I went. And when I came back, his only words were, "Well, you're back." But in that silence, a seed was planted, because the next morning I found a recorder hidden behind a book on the shelf. A tracking app had been installed on my phone, and a copy of Oliver's medical files had been downloaded to a shared drive without my consent. That was the first time I knew. He wasn't scared of my breakdown. He was documenting it like a hunter tagging his prey, and I did nothing. I kept quiet because shame is a cruel accomplice. But silence, my friend, only protects the wrong side of the truth. So I called Clara, told her everything, every detail I had buried beneath motherhood and performance and pain. She didn't judge, didn't flinch, she just said, "Then we go one step further." We didn't return to court. This time we went to the state board, filed a formal complaint, opened an investigation, not just into Ethan's custody tactics, but his business ethics. Why? Because one of the emails we had recovered, the one where he asked his lawyer to stage instability, it was sent from his company server. That alone was enough to launch a professional misconduct inquiry. But there was more. The therapist who falsely testified against me, she wasn't licensed. Her doctorate was purchased from an unaccredited online program in Cyprus. We had the receipts. Clara compiled everything, filed it with the appropriate oversight boards, silently. Because revenge isn't always about shouting. Sometimes it's about paperwork done right. A month later, I received the call. The woman on the line introduced herself as an investigator from the State Psychological Practices Division. "We've interviewed several parties," she said, "and we've received credible evidence of witness tampering, coaching of a minor, and use of unqualified testimony in family court." My hands tightened around the phone. "We'll be recommending revocation of your ex-husband's consulting credentials related to any legal testimony or child welfare involvement. And we've opened a separate ethics review into his legal team's conduct." I didn't smile, not out of restraint, but because it still wasn't enough. Not until Ethan knew what it felt like, not just to lose, but to be seen. So I wrote an op-ed, anonymous at first, published in a legal journal titled "The Other Side of Custody, When Winning Means Losing Your Soul." I told the story, not just mine, but countless women's, how the system can be weaponized with fake concern, how mental health gets twisted into strategy, how exhaustion gets turned into ammunition. The article went viral in legal circles. Clara called me the next day. "You started a wildfire," she said, sounding proud. Lawyers, judges, even psychologists shared it. Panels were formed, policies re-examined. People asked who wrote it, and I stayed silent. Until one day at a parenting seminar, I was invited to attend a speaker, read a passage from my own article, and in that moment, I raised my hand, stood up. I wrote that I said gasps, then applause. But none of that mattered as much as the email I received that night. It was from another mother, just one line: "Thank you for saying what I couldn't." I never set out to be a symbol. I didn't want a platform. I just wanted my son, my peace, my name cleared. But sometimes when people try to erase you, they accidentally draw a brighter outline around the person you were always meant to be. One afternoon, as I walked Oliver to school, he squeezed my hand and said, "Mommy, I don't have to pretend anymore." I knelt beside him. "No, baby, Never again. And for the first time in years, I knew what it meant to breathe without looking over my shoulder, to exist without defending myself, to mother without fear. Ethan, he disappeared from our lives. His visitation rights were revoked after missing 3 court-mandated therapy sessions. His company folded after 2 clients filed civil suits using the very evidence we uncovered. And me, I didn't watch the fallout. I just filed it away like a case I'd closed, with no bitterness, no need for gloating, just a quiet click as I shut the file. Because when you burn a man down with nothing but facts and fireproof love, there's no need to dance on the ashes. You don't always know when the war ends. There's no bell, no banner. No one comes to your door and says it's over, you can rest now. Sometimes peace arrives like silence in a room that once screamed, like the soft sound of your child breathing steadily in his sleep, after years of flinching at shadows cast by someone who was supposed to protect him. It's been 13 months since I won custody, but the real victory wasn't legal. It wasn't the judge's voice or Ethan's unraveling, it was what came after. The slow, almost imperceptible rebuilding of trust between me and my son. The look in his eyes when he asked a question and actually believed the answer. The way he stopped asking, "Is Daddy going to take me away again?" The thing about surviving betrayal is this. You learn to speak in truths, not victories. You learn to rebuild in moments, not milestones. You learn that healing isn't loud, it's quiet. Soft, almost unnoticeable, until one day you realize your life isn't on fire anymore, just warm. Oliver asks me about the past sometimes. He's smart. Sharper than most adults I know, too young to carry what he saw, too old to pretend he didn't. One night he said, "Why did Dad say you were sick when you weren't?" I could have given him a polished answer. I could have told him his father was confused, scared, or hurt. But I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Because sometimes when people feel weak, they try to make others look smaller so they can feel bigger." He nodded, then said, "That's sad, not angry, not bitter, just sad." He was right. I used to think I'd want revenge forever, that I'd feel power in knowing Ethan lost everything, his company, his credibility, his public image. But it wasn't power I wanted, it was peace. And when you finally hold peace in your hands, you don't waste it by looking backward, you build forward. I went back to work, slowly, not to the firm I left. That chapter was done. I joined a legal aid nonprofit, one focused on mothers like me. Women erased from narratives written by powerful men with expensive lawyers and polished lies. I didn't just want to practice law. I wanted to rewrite what justice looked like. On my first day, I sat across from a woman named Tanya, single mom, 3 kids facing fabricated charges filed by her ex-husband who had connections in the county court. She spoke like I used to, carefully, apologetically, as if every word might be used against her. When she finished, she said, "I don't even know if I'm making sense anymore." I leaned forward. Quietly, "You are." I said, "I hear you." Then I showed her my case file, the redacted version, of course. She stared at the pages, the transcripts, the forensics, the ruling, and her voice broke when she whispered, "This happened to you?" I nodded, and in that moment I saw something I'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. The kind born not from fairy tales, but from someone sitting across from you who already made it through the fire. Ethan never tried to reach out. I suspect he knew that every message would be logged, subpoenaed, and attached to another violation. And honestly, I no longer wondered what he thought. Not out of indifference, but because I had nothing left to give him. Not anger, not memory, not even space in my mind. He had become what all failed manipulators eventually become: irrelevant. One evening, I stood in front of a mirror, brushing Oliver's hair after bath time. He was humming Happy Warm, and out of nowhere he asked, "Did you ever want to quit?" I paused, then said, "Every day." But quitting would have meant giving up you, and that was never an option. He smiled, then went back to humming. And I realized he didn't see me as the woman who lost everything. He saw me as the woman who chose him over fear, over reputation, over silence. They say children don't remember everything, but they remember who showed up, who stayed, who listened, who refused to disappear even when it hurt like hell. And one day when he's older, when he's ready, I'll hand him the full file, the truth, all of it. Because I want him to know what it costs to protect his childhood and what it means to love someone so deeply. You'll rebuild your entire life just to keep their soul intact. I still wake up sometimes expecting to be called back into court. Some trauma never leaves the muscle, but I also wake up to sunlight now, to pancakes half burned by small hands, to laughter echoing through a house that once held nothing but strategy and surveillance. And I remind myself, he tried to destroy me, but all he did was prove how strong I had to be to survive him and still come back whole. This isn't a story of revenge, it's a story of reclamation, of one mother, one child, one voice that refused to be rewritten. So if you ask me now, Celia, do you feel like you won? I'd say, no, I didn't win. I outlived the lie, I rewrote the narrative, and I gave my son a front row seat to the most powerful truth of all. that justice doesn't always come in the form of a gavel. Sometimes it looks like a bedtime story told by the mother who never gave up. Sometimes it looks like silence that no longer fears being broken, and sometimes it looks like a little boy humming a song he once thought he'd never hear again.